My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins and the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. St. John often gives geographical markers in his narrative. He practically always tells us where exactly Jesus was, like giving us the GPS coordinates so we can actually picture where he is. Kind of like seeing a map with a timeline where he went from place to place. So today, the Gospel says that Jesus left Samaria for Galilee. It says, for Jesus himself testified that a prophet has no honor in his native place. And when he came to Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. So I can imagine a warm welcome, people being very kind there in Galilee, and little kids getting all excited, and many flocked to him because of all his miracles. But then we are told that he returned to Cana in Galilee, specifically Cana, where he had transformed the water into wine. And people, of course, remembered this, and clearly this wine now was a premium wine that was still stored perhaps in that same place, and news had gotten around, and maybe, who knows, maybe lots of people had even tasted this wine. It was the miracle wine. It had this full-bodied taste, it had a rich complexity, delicate aromas, and nuances that you could decipher as you tasted it, and a verve that would just linger on the palate. I can imagine that. Everybody wanted a taste of this divine wine. It was fruity, it had this beautiful herbal taste and floral notes. And of course, it was a vintage wine so unique that it could never, ever be repeated. And people in Cana they knew this was unique wine, and they were proud of what the Lord had left them with, and maybe it was the start of a whole new industry. Who knows? But John mentions these places because for him, geography plays a symbolic role. Like northern areas of Samaria and Galilee, they all accepted Jesus with faith, and I would say with lots of human affection. But the southern regions, like of Judea, and especially Jerusalem, tended to be quite standoffish and hostile with him. And they even made derogatory remarks about those, quote, Galileans of the north. I remember that lady in the courtyard of the temple who heard Peter's accent when he was warming himself there by the fire, and she said, hey, you must be one of the followers of that Galilean. Indeed, your accent betrays you, she said to him. Maybe the tone with which she said this was quite disdainful, or maybe even, accusatory, and Peter must have been frightened and even humiliated, and it even led him to deny Jesus. So there was a tension between the north and the south. And this is underscored by John's repeated emphasis on Jesus' withdrawal from Judea to go up to Galilee. And how painful it must have been, to experience the disbelief of the leaders in Judea and Jerusalem. Maybe the Lord said, okay, I'm going to come back here eventually to suffer at the hands of the elders and be crucified, but let's now go up to Galilee. So he does arrive there, and there's fascination, excitement there, especially because of his miracles. And so, he arrives there in Cana of Galilee, and there was a high officer of the king who heard that he was in Cana, and so he made his way there from Capharnaum. Now, Capharnaum itself, the Lord had been there many times. In fact, it had been the hub of many of his miracles, and no doubt this officer had heard all about them. He'd heard about how the Lord had healed the centurion's son, Peter's mother-in-law had been healed, the paralytic, and how he had cast out unclean spirits. So he said, okay, I've heard about all these. Maybe he can help my son, who's on the point of death. With all these miracles, I'm sure he'll do something. But Lord Jesus, when this man asks you this, there's some resistance. This is what you said. You said, unless you people see signs and wonders, you will not believe. Okay? This phrase, you people, seems to be addressed all those people in Capernaum who had seen all these miracles. And of course, they were not hostile to them, but, well, their faith was weak. They were just excited about miracles. But the Lord wanted, it's as though he wanted something more. Of course, he was a miracle worker, and that was essential, but he wants more. He wanted them, these miracles, to help them to enter more deeply into his teaching, and not just to stay at the level of miracles. And maybe this was the case with the official, although he dearly wanted, obviously, his son to be healed. And so he insisted again to Jesus to cure his son. And that's when Jesus said, don't worry, go back to Capernaum, your son will live. Okay? And so, okay, I'll go back. But I'm not sure he believed at this point. He may have felt that his journey was a failure. And so, as you know, on his way back, people came to him and said, hey, your son was healed. And he figured out that he was healed exactly at the moment when Jesus had said that he would be healed. And that clinched it. Now he and his whole family believed. And imagine what gratitude, what joy. And now it was like a new life for him. And now really faith entered him and his whole family. He told his friends what happened, and he would no longer be on the sidelines. He would no longer allow himself just to be in kind of superficial, distracted prayer. And so the miracle had a double effect, both the cure of the child, but also to convert him and his entire family. It was the flowering of faith in that official's life. His life was transformed. And any miracle has to have that double effect. It's not just, wow, this is amazing. Like, I read that story about a diocese in Latin America. It was a few years ago. So there was this parish, and one of the consecrated hosts had somehow been discarded and discovered by somebody. And so they apparently put it into some water and they just put it into the tabernacle, right? But then a week later, as they looked at it, it turned bloody, right? And they didn't know what to do, so they called the archbishop, and the archbishop said that professional photos of this should be taken. And they kept it, and they kept this hidden away somewhere. 3 years later, they sent it to some lab in New York City without telling them at all what this was. They just told them, examine what this is. And the analysis from the lab, not knowing what it was, said that this material is a fragment of the heart muscles found in the wall of the left ventricle close to the valves. And it said that it is the left side of the heart that pumps blood to all the parts of the body. And so the lab determined that the heart was alive at the time that the sample was taken, since white blood cells die outside of a living organism. Okay? And plus, they said that the white blood cells had penetrated the tissue, which further indicates that the heart had been under severe stress, as if the owner had been beaten severely in the chest. Now, that's a nice story. And miracles and stories like these are an incentive for a renewed faith. And here, it has to lead to a deeper faith, certainly in the presence of Christ in the Eucharist. Otherwise, it would just be an inexplicable fact. Now, when the multiplication of loaves and fish took place, the people of Capernaum were excited. They got more bread and fish. But they were quite a bit slower to believe in you when you talked about the bread of life, about the Eucharist. They were slower at that moment. And that must have saddened you, Lord Jesus, because you wanted them also to believe in your real presence. If we really believed in the real presence, we would never want to receive you in mortal sin, of course. We would have a horror even of just receiving you indifferently. Indeed, we would want to go to communion every day. So the gospel closes saying that this was the second sign that Jesus did in Galilee. And that he could heal that child from afar means, that he could also heal us in our own lukewarmness, our own anxiety, our fears, or any of these effects of our lack of faith. Let these miracles really be for us a sign that point us in the right direction. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations that you have communicated to me in this time of prayer. I ask your help to put them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.